never meant to cross paths with organized crime, but when I overheard those whispered words in the downpour, staying silent would have meant watching someone die. The rain hammered down like judgment, transforming the bright signs along Mitchell Avenue into smeared paintings of light across the wet asphalt. Mary's daughter, Amara, gripped her hand tightly, her pink backpack bouncing as they hurried past Jin's noodle house. The scent of sesame oil and ginger trailed them from the restaurant's vents, mingling with that distinctive smell of rain-soaked pavement that Mary associated with exhaustion and endless double shifts. "Mama, my sneakers are soaked through," Amara whimpered, her voice muffled by her yellow raincoat's hood. "I know, sweetheart. Just a little further to the car. Almost there. Almost safe." Mary was mentally calculating whether they could afford both gas and this week's groceries when she heard them. Two men stood beside a sleek black vehicle parked awkwardly near the sidewalk, their voices hushed but urgent. Korean. Mary had worked alongside enough Korean nurses at City General to recognize the language's distinctive rhythm, even if she only understood fragments. Both men were young, wearing costly black coats that couldn't quite conceal the bulges at their waistlines. Mary knew she should keep walking, but then one of them spoke clearly enough that the words pierced through the rain's static. "Paktan. Chai Naoeo. Loaded in." Her blood turned to ice. The phrase replayed in her mind, sharpening into terrible clarity. Working night shifts at the hospital, she'd picked up more than just medical Korean. She'd learned the basics from worried families in waiting rooms, from whispered conversations between patients. Loaded in. Her eyes snapped to where they were staring. Across the rain-slick street, a silver luxury sedan gleamed beneath an amber streetlight. Expensive, pristine. Surrounded by three men in tailored suits who stood with military alertness. One gripped the driver's door handle, keys catching the light. At the center of that protective formation stood someone Mary recognized from newspaper articles and hushed warnings, the kind people gave without speaking names directly. Kim Jae-sung. Controlled. A face carved from expensive stone, sharp cheekbones, eyes like dark steel that seemed to measure everything while revealing nothing. His suit probably cost more than 4 months of Mary's rent. He moved with liquid grace, purposeful and unstoppable. Even through the rain-blurred distance, Mary could sense the authority he radiated. Pedestrians unconsciously stepped aside. Shop owners glanced away. A silent storm in human form. The man who made the city's criminal underworld function smoothly. The name that made even detectives hesitate. Mary should have kept walking. Instead, she thought about the families she'd seen in the emergency room. The ones arriving after accidents that were never accidents. She remembered the mother last spring whose teenage son had been caught in crossfire. She thought about Amara's small hand in hers and how easily a child could become collateral damage. One of the guards reached for the car door. "Stay right here," Mary told Amara, pressing her daughter behind a delivery van, shoving her worn purse into the child's arms. "Don't move, baby. I mean it." "Mama, Mary was already running. "Wait." Her voice cracked through the downpour. Too loud. Too desperate. "Don't open that door." Everything froze. 5 men turned toward her in synchronized predatory motion. Rain streamed down Mary's face. Her old sneakers squeaked on slick concrete. Her hospital scrubs clung to her frame, the City General logo probably visible even through the deluge. She looked exactly like what she was. A terrified, exhausted, rain-soaked nobody who just shouted at the most dangerous man in the city. But Kim Jae-sung held her gaze. Not with anger or confusion, but with curiosity. He tilted his head slightly, rain sliding off the sharp plane of his face. Those dark eyes, like storm clouds in the neon glow, pinned her in place. His expression remained neutral. No frown, no smile. Just intense, unnerving focus that stole her breath. One guard stepped forward, hand moving toward his jacket. "She's obviously just..." "Stop." Jae-sung's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind that didn't require volume to command absolute obedience. He raised one hand. The guard froze mid-step. Jae-sung looked at Mary. Really looked. Not through her, not dismissively, but with an intensity that felt like being examined under harsh light. "Say it again," he said, still quiet, still terrifyingly calm. Mary's throat was desert dry. "Don't get in that car." "Why not?" She wanted to grab Amara and disappear into the rain, pretend she'd never overheard those men speaking Korean, but his eyes wouldn't let her lie. "I heard them." She jerked her chin toward the black vehicle. The two men were trying to melt into shadows now, but too late. They said bomb. They said they loaded it in the car. For 3 seconds nobody moved. Then Jae-sung smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't reassuring. It was the smile of someone who just had a suspicion confirmed, and it chilled Mary more than the rain ever could. "Min-ho," he said, still watching her. "Check the vehicle." One guard, broad-shouldered, moving with military precision, approached the silver sedan. He crouched near the undercarriage, pulled out a small flashlight, and went completely still. "Hyung Nim." Min-ho's voice was tight. "She's right. It's wired." The world tilted. Mary had been right. She'd actually been right. Which meant the explosion was a wall of sound and heat that knocked her backward. She hit the wet pavement hard, palms scraping, vision whiting out. Glass rained down in crystalline fragments. Car alarms shrieked in dissonant chorus. Somewhere close, Amara was screaming her name. Mary rolled onto her hands and knees, ears ringing, and looked up. The silver sedan was a flaming skeleton. Fire licked upward into the rain, hissing and spitting. Smoke billowed across the street in thick, acrid clouds. And through it all, Kim Jae-sung stood exactly where he'd been, untouched, unshaken. His dark eyes still locked on her. Not on the burning wreckage. Not on his men scrambling to secure the area. Not on the chaos erupting around him. Her. "Amara." Mary tried to stand, but someone's hand closed around her upper arm, hauling her upright. Another guard. Not rough but firm. "Your daughter's safe." Min-ho appeared on her other side, rain streaming down his face. The van shielded her. She's scared but unharmed. Mary could see her now. Amara pressed against the van's wheel well, clutching Mary's purse, her eyes huge and terrified in the fire's red glow. "Let me go to her." "Not yet." Min-ho's grip didn't loosen. "Hyung Nim wants to speak with you first." Jae-sung approached through the smoke like something from a nightmare. No hurry, no fear, just that same fluid, inevitable movement. He stopped 2 feet away, close enough that Mary could see rain beading on his expensive suit, a faint scar along his jawline, the complete absence of shock in his expression. "Who sent you?" His voice remained quiet, controlled. But underneath she heard steel. "What? Nobody. Who told you to be here tonight? To say those exact words?" "Nobody. I heard them talking. I swear." "In Korean." "Not a question." "Test." "Yes. I work at City General. Night shift. I've picked up enough to." Her voice cracked. "I'm telling you the truth. I don't know who planted that bomb. I don't know anything except what I overheard." He studied her for a long, terrible moment. Behind him, sirens wailed in the distance, drawing closer. His men shifted, forming a tighter perimeter, blocking sight lines from the gathering crowd. "Min-ho," Jae-sung said, still watching Mary. "Take her and the child. Back entrance. We'll continue this conversation somewhere more private." Ice flooded Mary's veins. No, you can't. I need to get my daughter home. You just saved my life." His head tilted again. That same unsettling focus. "That means either you're extraordinarily brave or you're part of something much larger. Either way, Miss Jackson. Mary Jackson." Her voice shook. "And I'm not part of anything. I just didn't want to watch someone die." Something flickered in his expression. Not warmth exactly, but something that made her think, just for a second, that he believed her. "Then you have nothing to fear from a few questions," he said. "Your daughter stays with you. You'll both be perfectly safe." It wasn't a request. As Min-ho guided her toward a dark SUV idling at the curb, Mary caught Amara's terrified face. She tried to smile, tried to look calm, tried to pretend they weren't being taken by the Korean Mafia because she'd made the stupidest, bravest decision of her life. Just before they ushered her into the vehicle, Mary looked back one last time. Kim Jae-sung stood in the rain and firelight, watching her go, his dark eyes reflecting the flames. And Mary knew with absolute certainty that shouting across that street had changed everything. The private room at the back of Songbird smelled like leather and aged whiskey. Jae-sung preferred it that way. Familiar, controlled, insulated from the chaos still unfolding 3 blocks away. Through the tinted windows, he could see the red and blue pulse of emergency vehicles painting the rain-soaked street. But the sirens were muted here, reduced to a distant hum beneath the building's soundproofing. Mary Jackson sat across from him, her daughter tucked against her side like a shield. The girl, Amara he'd heard her called, had finally stopped crying, but her eyes were still red-rimmed and enormous, tracking every movement with prey-like vigilance. The mother was different. Mary's hands trembled where they gripped her daughter's shoulders, but her jaw was set, her gaze direct, defiant even. Water still dripped from her hair onto the expensive carpet, and her scrubs clung to her frame in a way that emphasized exactly how small she was. How ordinary. And yet she'd run toward a bomb. "We have a problem," Minho said, closing the door with a soft click. His voice was low, controlled, but Jae-sung heard the edge beneath it. Minho had been with him for 9 years, long enough for Jae-sung to recognize when his head of security wanted blood. "Explain." Jae-sung didn't look away from Mary. She flinched slightly at the word but held his gaze. She knew exactly where to look, exactly what to say. Minho moved to stand between Jae-sung and the women, his bulk deliberately imposing. "The Beck organization has been testing our territory for weeks. Park Min-woo's crew has been quiet, but not gone. This," he gestured toward Mary, "is too convenient." "I didn't," Mary started, but Minho cut her off. "You speak Korean. You appear at the exact moment, the exact location. You shout a warning 15 seconds before my man would have discovered it anyway." Minho's hand rested on his belt, close to the weapon Jae-sung knew was holstered there. "Hyung-nim, let me handle this quietly. The child never saw our faces clearly in the rain." Jae-sung felt something cold slide through his chest. Not anger. He'd learned long ago that anger made you careless, but something darker, more fundamental. His brother's face flashed behind his eyes. Jaemin, 11 years old, his hand waving from the back window of their father's car. The fireball that had consumed him 3 seconds later. No innocence. The rule he'd built his empire on. The line he'd drawn in blood and kept sacred even when it cost him territory, respect, leverage. "Bring the translator," Jae-sung said quietly. Minho's jaw tightened. "Hyung-nim. Now." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Mary's arms tightened around her daughter, and Jae-sung saw the girl bury her face against her mother's shoulder. Protective instinct. Raw and unthinking. The same instinct that had sent Mary running into the street. Minho left without another word. Jae-sung leaned back in his chair, fingers finding the jade cufflinks at his wrists. A tell he'd never quite managed to eliminate. "Tell me again what you heard." "Exactly." Mary's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Poktan chai neo. Her pronunciation was clumsy, American flat, but clear enough. "Bomb. Loaded in the car. That's all I caught before I..." She broke off, shaking her head. "I work night shifts at City General. We get Korean patients. I picked up some medical terms, some basics. Enough to know when someone's talking about something that might kill people." "Convenient," Jae-sung said, echoing Minho's word deliberately. He watched her reaction. Her eyes flashed. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to get involved with?" She glanced at Amara, swallowed the rest. "I just didn't want to watch someone die. That's it. That's the whole story." The door opened. Minho returned with a thin man in wire-rimmed glasses. David Park, the translator Jae-sung kept on retainer for exactly these situations. David's expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes widened slightly when he saw the woman and child. "David," Jae-sung said. This woman claims she overheard 2 Korean speakers near the explosion site. I need you to confirm her story. What followed was 15 minutes of careful, methodical questioning. David asked Mary to repeat what she'd heard, then asked her to describe the speakers, their positions, their body language. He asked about inflection, about context, about why she'd interpreted the words the way she had. Through it all, Jae-sung watched Mary's hands. They were work rough, nails trimmed short and practical. No jewelry except a thin silver ring on her right hand. Not a wedding ring, he noted. Her fingers trembled, but they never stopped moving, stroking her daughter's hair, adjusting the girl's hood, maintaining constant physical contact that spoke of bone-deep protectiveness. Finally, David turned to him. Her story checks out. The phrasing is exactly what someone would say if they were confirming a device placement. And her pronunciation. He shook his head. It's terrible. Honestly, no one trying to fabricate a story would mangle the vowels that badly. She heard it, didn't fully understand it, but knew enough to recognize the danger. The cold thing in Jae-sung's chest eased slightly. Min-ho made a disgusted sound. So we just let her walk. She's still a witness. Still a liability. She saved my life, Jae-sung said quietly. Or she was part of an elaborate. Look at her. Jae-sung's voice sharpened just enough. Min-ho went still. Look at the child. Look at her hands. This isn't a professional. This is a woman who works double shifts and happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He paused. Or the right place. Mary's expression was unreadable, but he saw her shoulders drop slightly. Relief maybe. Or exhaustion. The sound of police radios crackled from somewhere outside. Min-ho checked his phone, frowned. Detective Kim is asking questions. Wants to know if we need anything. Tell him we're fine. The explosion was a gas leak. Tragic accident. We'll be filing a report with the city. Jae-sung stood, smoothing his jacket. The motion drew Mary's gaze, and he saw her calculating, trying to understand the casual way he dismissed attempted murder. I'll have Min-ho take you home, Jae-sung said. We can get home ourselves. Mary stood too, pulling Amara up with her. The girl swayed slightly, exhausted. We don't need. You do. Jae-sung kept his voice level. Reasonable. The men who planted that bomb saw you scream. They know you warned me, which means they know you're a problem. He watched the fear bloom in her eyes. Not for herself, he realized. For the child. That same raw protectiveness that had sent her running in the rain. One escort home, she said finally, voice tight. Then we're done. You go back to your world. I go back to mine. Jae-sung didn't correct her. Didn't tell her that her world and his had collided the moment she opened her mouth. And that collision had gravity. Instead, he nodded to Min-ho, who led them out through the back exit. Alone in the room, Jae-sung returned to the window. The flames had been extinguished, leaving only the smoking skeleton of his sedan and a scatter of broken glass catching the streetlights. His phone buzzed. A message from Min-ho. Tail in place. 3-man rotation. She won't see them. Jae-sung deleted the message and pulled up another screen. Security feeds from the surrounding blocks. He rewound to the moment before the explosion, watching Mary's small figure sprint across the wet street, arms outstretched, mouth open in a shout he couldn't hear through the silent footage. She'd saved him. Nobody saved him. People feared him, obeyed him, used him. But saved him. That required something he'd thought extinct in his world. Genuine courage without calculation. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A single image loaded. A grainy still from a traffic camera. Mary caught mid-shout, rain streaming down her face, eyes wide with desperate conviction. Below it, a text in Korean. She shouted before it exploded. Use her. Jae-sung stared at the message for 3 long seconds. Then he forwarded it to Min-ho with 2 words. Double the watch. He deleted the original, but the image stayed burned in his mind. That split second of pure, reckless humanity that had rewritten his evening. And he suspected far more than that. The apartment building's hallway smelled like old carpet and someone's burnt dinner. Mary fumbled with her keys, hyper-aware of the black sedan idling at the curb 3 floors below, its engine a low purr that hadn't stopped since Minho dropped them off 20 minutes ago. Protection, he'd called it. Felt like surveillance. Amara was already asleep, curled on the couch under Mary's work jacket, her yellow raincoat still damp and draped over the radiator. The apartment was too small. 1 bedroom, a kitchenette that barely fit a 2-burner stove, thin walls that transmitted every argument and footstep from the neighbors. But it was theirs. Anonymous. Except it wasn't anymore. Mary made chamomile tea with shaking hands, the mug chipped at the rim, steam rising into the dim light of the single overhead bulb. Through the window, she could see the sedan's silhouette, unmoving. A second vehicle had appeared at the opposite end of the block. Her phone was cracked across the screen from when she dropped it last month, but it still worked. She opened the browser, typed with cramped fingers. Korean words for bomb explosion car. The translation sites loaded slowly. Octanbum. Or. Neoyo put in load. She'd heard it right. The certainty should have been comforting. Instead, it made her stomach clench. Because if she'd heard it right, if she'd saved Kim Jae-sung's life, then whoever planted that bomb knew her face now. Knew she'd interfered. Knew where to find her. A sound in the stairwell. Footsteps. Uneven and too slow. Mary's pulse spiked. She set down the tea, moved to the door, pressed her ear against the wood. The footsteps stopped just outside. She thought of another night 6 years ago. Amara strapped in her car seat. Headlights in the rearview mirror, too close, too fast. The impact that sent them spinning into the guardrail. The driver who never stopped, never looked back. She'd learned then. You don't ignore danger and hope it passes. You face it or it devours you. The doorknob rattled. Mary grabbed the softball bat she kept by the coat rack, Amara's from last summer's failed league, and raised it with both hands. "I've called the police," she lied, voice steadier than she felt. "They're on their way." Thud. A grunt. Scuffling sounds, muffled and violent. Then silence. Mary's hands ached from gripping the bat. She counted to 30 before the knock came. 3 sharp raps, controlled and deliberate. "Miss Jackson." Minho's voice, calm as if he'd just arrived for coffee. "It's clear, but you need to open the door." She did. Bat still raised. Minho stood in the hallway, suit jacket slightly rumpled, flanked by another man in black. Between them, a third figure slumped against the wall. Young, maybe 25, nose bleeding, hands zip-tied behind his back. A knife lay on the floor, 3 feet from his boots. "He's not ours," Minho said simply. Mary's grip on the bat loosened. "Who?" "Someone who shouldn't have gotten this close." Minho's expression was unreadable. "We're moving you now." "No." The word came out too fast, too sharp. Amara stirred on the couch, mumbling in her sleep. "No, we're not going anywhere. This is our home. This is a target." A new voice, colder, quieter. Kim Jae-sung stepped over the zip-tied man like he was a piece of furniture, his gaze sweeping the cramped apartment in one efficient pass. He looked almost surreal here, too polished, too composed. His tailored suit absorbing the dim light like he'd stepped out of a different dimension. His fingers found his cufflinks, adjusted them with precision that felt compulsive. The motion lasted half a second, but Mary caught it. Crack in the control. "You saved me," Jae-sung said, stopping 3 feet from her threshold. He didn't enter uninvited. The courtesy felt absurd given the circumstances, but she noticed it anyway. "Now you're a target. The men who planted that bomb know you interfered. They sent him." A glance at the bleeding prowler. "And they'll send more." "So what?" Mary's voice cracked. "You lock us up somewhere. Keep us prisoner for doing the right thing. I keep you alive." His tone didn't rise, but something beneath it sharpened. "There's a difference. We're not leaving." Mary moved to stand between him and the couch, between this dangerous stranger and her sleeping daughter. "This is all we have. I'm not letting you." "One night." The shift in his voice stopped her. Softer. Not quite pleading, but close enough to surprise them both. "One night in a safe house," Jae-sung continued. his dark eyes holding hers with uncomfortable intensity. Let me secure your building, trace the leak, confirm the threat level. If it's contained, you come back tomorrow. If it's not. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Mary looked at Amara. Small, vulnerable, dreaming of homework and playground games and a normal life that was evaporating by the second. One night, she said finally. Then we're done. Jae-sung nodded once. Pack light. Min-ho will carry the girl. As Mary moved to wake Amara, she heard the faint crinkle of paper. A folded note lay on the floor just inside the door, white against the faded wood. She must have missed it when Min-ho knocked. She picked it up with numb fingers, unfolded it. Block letters. Black ink. He can't save you twice. Her hands started shaking again. This time they didn't stop. The safe house was nothing like Mary expected. She'd imagined something industrial. Concrete walls, barred windows, the aesthetic of a very expensive prison. Instead, the car pulled up to a brownstone in a quiet neighborhood she didn't recognize, tree-lined and lit by antique street lamps that cast warm pools on the sidewalk. The house itself was 3 stories of red brick and ivy, with wrought iron fencing and window boxes that probably held flowers in spring. It looked like a home. Inside, the illusion persisted for exactly 30 seconds. Then Mary noticed the cameras tucked into crown molding, the reinforced door frames, the way every window had security film that caught the light at odd angles. Tasteful. Expensive. Look down. Second floor, Min-ho said, leading them up a staircase with a runner so plush Mary's worn sneakers left no sound. 2 bedrooms, shared bath. Kitchen access is fine, but the phone only makes internal calls. Hyung Nim's orders. Amara was awake now, groggy and confused, clutching her backpack like a life raft. Mama, where are we? Somewhere safe, baby. Mary hoped it was true. Just for tonight. The bedroom was perfect in a way that made her uncomfortable. Clean white linens. Blackout curtains. A bookshelf stocked with novels she'd never have time to read. The adjoining room for Amara had a twin bed with a stuffed elephant already perched on the pillow, as if someone had known a child was coming. After Min-ho left, Mary sat on the edge of Amara's bed, smoothing her daughter's braids with hands that still trembled slightly. I'm going to get us out of here soon, Mary whispered. I promise. Amara looked up at her with those 2 old eyes. Is it because of the explosion? Yeah, baby. But it's going to be okay. The man downstairs, Mr. Kim. He's the one you saved, right? Mary nodded. He seems sad, Amara said simply, and rolled over to face the wall. Dinner happened an hour later, after Mary had showered with hotel-sized bottles of expensive shampoo and changed into clean clothes someone had left folded on the bed. Her size exactly, which was either thoughtful or deeply unsettling. The dining room was smaller than she expected, intimate even, with a table set for 3. Jae-sung was already there, jacket removed, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The casualness looked wrong on him, like a photograph slightly out of focus. Your daughter? He asked as Mary entered. Asleep. It's been a long night. He nodded, gestured to a chair. The meal was simple. Braised short ribs, vegetables, rice still steaming. Someone had cooked this recently in this house. Not takeout. Not catered. The domesticity of it made her chest tight. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Jae-sung set down his chopsticks. His gaze direct but not aggressive. How old is she? Amara. 7. She goes to Westfield Elementary. 2nd grade. Mary paused. Why? I'm calculating risk. Daily routines, exposure points, ways to keep her safe if this escalates. It won't escalate. The words sounded hollow even to her. I said we'd reassess. His fingers found his cufflinks again. Right one, then left. That same compulsive adjustment. The prowler in your stairwell wasn't random. He had your apartment number written on his palm. Someone gave him specific instructions. Mary's appetite vanished. She pushed her plate away. So what do you want from us? Nothing. He said it so quietly she almost missed it. You don't owe me anything. I owe you. Before she could respond, the door creaked. Amara stood in the doorway, the stuffed elephant tucked under one arm, her eyes puffy with interrupted sleep. I heard voices, she said uncertainly. Jae-sung stood immediately, the motion fluid and non-threatening. I'm sorry we woke you. Are you hungry? Amara shook her head, but her gaze caught on the bookshelf in the corner. 2 children's books sitting on top of adult fiction, spines bright and new. Those are for you, Jae-sung said. If you'd like them. Amara looked at her mother for permission. Mary nodded, too surprised to speak. Her daughter crossed to the shelf, picked up the books, The Wild Robot and Matilda, and held them like treasures. Thank you, Mr. Kim. Jae-sung, he said. Something in his expression had softened just slightly, the sharp edges blurred. You can call me Jae-sung. Amara tilted her head, studying him with that unnerving directness children sometimes had. Do you ever get scared, Jae-sung? The question hung in the air. Mary held her breath. Jae-sung crouched down, bringing himself to Amara's eye level. His voice when he spoke was careful, honest. Only when I can't predict what comes next. Like chess, you know chess. When you can't see the opponent's strategy. Exactly like chess. Amara considered this, nodded gravely, and padded back to her room with the books clutched to her chest. When she was gone, Mary found her voice. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. He straightened, rolled his sleeves back down with precise motions. Children shouldn't pay for adult mistakes. There was weight beneath the words. History, maybe. Or pain. Mary didn't push. The office on the 3rd floor was soundproofed and windowless, lit by a single desk lamp that cast long shadows across maps and ledgers. Jae-sung stood at the desk, rolling up his left sleeve fully now, exposing the scar that ran from wrist to mid-forearm. 13 years old. He'd gotten it digging through wreckage, searching for his brother's body after the car bomb. The glass had cut through his jacket, his skin down to tendon. He'd barely felt it. The pain had come later, in sterile hospital rooms where his father refused to visit, where guilt metastasized into something harder and colder. No innocence. The rule had been Jaemin's eulogy, and he'd kept it sacred. Until tonight, it had never been tested like this. By a woman who'd risked everything for a stranger. By a 7-year-old who asked if he got scared. His phone buzzed. Min-ho's voice, clipped and professional. Hyungnim. Park Min-woo's organization is denying everything. Diplomatic channels, lawyers, the whole performance. But I've got chatter from the docs. Local hire, not their usual crew. We're still tracking, but the park organization was subcontracted. Someone local wanted it to look Korean gang-related. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. Options. Standard play would be to send a message. Public. Permanent. No. The word came out sharper than intended. Non-lethal intelligence gathering. Trace the money, the contracts, the leaks. I want names, not bodies. Hyungnim, that's not how we. It's how we do it now. Jae-sung ended the call. He stared at the scar on his wrist, flexed his fingers. Mary Jackson's influence was already tilting him, rewriting equations he'd calculated in blood for over a decade. It should have worried him. Instead, it felt like the first clean breath he'd taken in years. The next morning, Mary woke to the sound of male voices, low, mocking, drifting up from the 1st floor. She moved to the landing, staying out of sight. Softened him, one guard was saying. Did you see how he talked to the kid? Next he'll be reading bedtime stories. The bomb wasn't even meant for him. A different voice, younger, sneering. You heard Min-ho. It was a warning shot. They wanted to scare him, not kill him. But now he's got civilians in the house, acting like what? Min-ho's voice, cold as a knife. Silence. Get back to your posts. Now. Footsteps scattered. Mary stayed frozen, her pulse hammering in her ears. The bomb wasn't meant for him. The words rewrote everything. Mary caught the younger guard, the sneering one, in the kitchen an hour later. He was making coffee, casual and unaware, until she stepped into the doorway and closed it behind her. What did you mean? Her voice was low, controlled. When you said the bomb wasn't meant for him. The guard's eyes widened. I didn't, you shouldn't have. Tell me. He shifted, glanced at the closed door like it might save him. Look, lady, you don't want to get involved in. I'm already involved. She took a step closer. Tell me what you meant, or I'll ask Jae-sung himself. Loudly. In front of everyone. The threat worked. His shoulders sagged. The park organization was hired to scare him. That's it. A device big enough to total the car. Timed for after he'd gotten clear. A message, not a hit. He swallowed. But then you screamed. You embarrassed his men in public. Made them look weak. So the orders changed. The floor tilted beneath her. Changed how? They want you now. To prove he bleeds. To prove he cares about something other than territory and profit. The guard's voice dropped. You're the target, Miss Jackson. You and the kid. He's just collateral. Mary's vision tunneled. She heard herself say thank you from very far away. Heard her footsteps carry her up the stairs, down the hall to the third-floor office where Jae-sung sat behind a desk with maps spread like battle plans. She didn't knock. Just shoved the door open hard enough to make it bang against the wall. You caged us and painted a target. Her voice shook with rage. Fear. Something wilder. You brought us here and turned us into bait. Jae-sung stood slowly. His expression unreadable. Mary, don't marry me. She advanced on him, hands clenched. That bomb wasn't meant for you. It was a warning. But I interfered. So now they want me. And you didn't tell me. I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. The words tore out of her. Keeping us close so you could control the damage. So you could. If they touch you, I burn the city. The sentence stopped her. Not because it was loud, it wasn't. Because it was utterly, terrifyingly sincere. Jae-sung's control had cracked. His hands were flat on the desk, knuckles white, and his eyes. God. His eyes held something raw and desperate that made her breath catch. You think I brought you here for strategy? His voice was rough. For leverage. I brought you here because the alternative was leaving you in that apartment to die. Because I couldn't. He broke off, one hand moving to his left wrist, fingers tracing the scar through his sleeve. Till she was learning to read. Couldn't what? Mary's anger was still there, but something else crowded in beside it. Something that felt dangerously like understanding. Couldn't let it happen again. The words came out flat. Defeated. My brother. Jimin. He was 11. Car bomb. 13 years ago. Meant for my father, but the timer was off. He was in the back seat when it detonated. His fingers pressed harder against the scar. I watched it happen. Watched him wave at me through the window 30 seconds before. He didn't finish. Didn't have to. Mary's fury collapsed into something more complicated. Jae-sung, you want agency. He looked up, met her gaze. Fine. I'll give it to you. But understand this. I will not watch another innocent person burn because I made the wrong call. I won't survive it twice. The silence stretched between them, taut and electric. Mary saw him fully now. Not the controlled mobster or the cold strategist, but a man haunted by a child's scream and a lifetime of impossible choices. Then give me real protection, she said finally. Not locked doors and guards who think I'm a liability. Real tools. Information. A voice in whatever comes next. Something shifted in his expression. You're asking to be involved. I'm asking to survive. There's a difference. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. 3 transport lanes shut down by tonight. Non-lethal pressure on the subcontractors until someone talks. We find out who hired the park organization, and we end this without bodies. His gaze held hers. Your way. No blood. No blood. Mary exhaled shakily. It wasn't trust. Not yet. But it was something. Before either could speak again, Jae-sung's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and every trace of warmth drained from his face. What? Mary asked. He turned the phone toward her. A video still. 2 men kneeling in a concrete room, faces bruised and swollen. She recognized them. The Korean speakers from the rainy street. Below the image, a text in English. Bring the woman. Prove you bleed. Pier 9. Midnight. Come alone or we send pictures to her daughter's school. The same message. Location. I'm. A threat that made Mary's blood turn to ice. Jae-sung's voice was quiet. Lethal. I'm going. Not alone. Mary heard herself say. If they want me, they get me. But on our terms. His eyes snapped to hers, something like horror flashing across his face. Absolutely not. You said I get a voice. She stepped closer, heart hammering. So hear me. We do this together or they'll just keep coming. I'm done being a target. Time to be a move they can't predict. For 3 seconds, Jae-sung said nothing. Then his fingers found his cufflinks one more time. Adjusting, studying, preparing. One condition, he said. You do exactly what I tell you when I tell you. No improvising. Mary thought of the rain, the explosion, the moment she'd chosen to run toward danger instead of away from it. Deal, she lied. The War Council convened at 11 p.m. in the safe house's basement, a room Jae-sung had hoped Mary would never see. Concrete walls, a single steel table, maps marked with routes and territories that represented years of careful negotiation and calculated violence. Minho stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, jaw set. We hit them now. Hard. Every known associate of the park organization in the city. Send a message so loud they hear it in Seoul. No. Jae-sung didn't look up from the photograph on his phone. The 2 Korean men, bruised and kneeling. That's exactly what they want. Escalation. A war that draws attention, destabilizes routes, gives our competitors an opening. So we do nothing. Minho's voice rose slightly. They threatened the kid, Hyung Nim. They sent a school as leverage. That crosses every line we have. I know. Jae-sung's fingers found his cufflinks, adjusted them with controlled precision. Which is why we're going to the meet. Silence dropped like a stone. You can't be serious, Minho said finally. It's a trap. Obvious, transparent. They want you dead or desperate. Either works for them. They want proof I'm compromised. Jae-sung set down his phone, met Minho's gaze. That I care about something other than territory and profit. That the woman changed my rules. So we prove them wrong. No. Jae-sung stood, the motion sharp enough to cut through Minho's objection. We prove them right. The room went still. Mary comes with me, Jae-sung continued, his voice calm but unyielding. Not as bait, as credibility. She's the reason this started. She's the reason they believe I've shifted. If I show up alone, they'll assume I've already killed her to eliminate the weakness. If she's there, he paused, they might actually negotiate. Minho stared at him like he'd suggested walking into the ocean with stones in his pockets. You're risking everything on a civilian who doesn't understand our world. She understands more than you think. Jae-sung's tone sharpened. And she's not a civilian anymore. She stopped being one the moment she saved my life. Hyung Nim. Final decision. Jae-sung's voice went quiet, which meant the conversation was over. Prep for Pier 9. Midnight. 3-man shadow team on adjacent rooftops. Mary and I go in alone. Minho's jaw worked but he nodded. The others filed out, leaving Jae-sung alone with the maps and the weight of what he was about to ask. He found Mary in the library, curled in an armchair with a cup of tea gone cold. She looked up when he entered, eyes shadowed but alert. Can't sleep either, she asked. I need to show you something. He held out a small device, matte black the size of a car key fob. Panic transponder. Press and hold for 3 seconds and every man I have descends on your location. It has a 5-mile range. Mary took it carefully, turned it over in her hands. You're really taking me to this meet? Yes. He sat across from her, elbows on his knees, close enough to see the faint tremor in her fingers. But I need you to understand the rules. When we're inside, you stay on my left. Always my left, never my right. That's Minho's side. Things go wrong, exits are north and east. The west wall backs onto water. If I say now, you run for the east door. Don't look back. Don't hesitate. And if you say something else, I won't. His gaze held hers. The only word that matters is now. Everything else is negotiation. She nodded slowly. What do I say if they ask me questions? The truth. Exactly what you heard that night. Nothing more, nothing less. He paused, something vulnerable flickering across his expression. They'll test you. Try to find inconsistencies, pressure points. But if you stay calm and precise, they'll believe you. And if they believe you, we have a chance. A chance at what? Ending this without more bodies. His voice dropped. Your way. No blood. Mary's hands steadied around the transponder. I'm scared, Jae-sung. Good. He leaned forward, close enough that she could see the scar at his jawline, the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes. Fear keeps you sharp. It's overconfidence that gets you killed. She met his gaze, something fierce and fragile in her expression. Don't let me be the reason you die tonight. You won't be. He said it with absolute certainty. You'll be the reason I survive. Pier 9 smelled like salt and rust and old fish. The warehouse squatted at the water's edge, windows dark except for the stuttering glow of fluorescent lights deep inside. Jae-sung felt Mary tense beside him as they approached the rolling door, half open like a mouth waiting to swallow them. Left side, he murmured. Stay close. Inside, the space was cavernous and cold. Stacks of wooden crates formed narrow corridors, and the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in sickly green-white. At the center, a clear space had been made. In it, a man sat in a metal chair like a king on a throne. Park Min-woo was older than Jae-sung expected. 60s maybe, with silver hair swept back and a face carved by decades of dangerous decisions. He wore a suit that probably cost more than the warehouse, and his hands, scarred knuckles, steady grip, rested on a black walking cane. Mr. Kim. Park's English was precise, accented but clear. You honor us with your presence. Chairman Park. Jae-sung stopped 10 feet away, Mary a half step behind him on his left. You requested a meeting. I'm here. Park's gaze slid to Mary, lingered. And you brought the woman. How sentimental. I brought proof, Jae-sung corrected. That your men acted without your knowledge. That this war was manufactured by someone who wanted us both weakened. Park's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Interest maybe. Or calculation. Bold claim. Do you have evidence? I have her. Jae-sung gestured slightly to Mary. The woman who heard your men that night. Who can tell you exactly what they said and what they were paid to do. Park leaned forward, cane tapping once against the concrete. Then let her speak. Jae-sung felt Mary's tension, the way her breath quickened. But when she stepped forward just one step, not too far, her voice was steady. Paktan chai neo. The Korean words were still clumsy but clear. That's what I heard. Loaded in the car. And then one of them said. She paused, closed her eyes like she was listening to a recording in her mind. Akimi Gwenchon Yul Jioya. It'll be fine by morning. Park went very still. Those were my men's words. Yes. Mary opened her eyes. But they were talking about a device timed to go off after Mr. Kim had left the car. Not during. It wasn't a hit. It was a scare. And yet you warned him anyway. Park's voice was soft. Dangerous. Why? Because I didn't know the difference. Mary's chin lifted slightly. I just knew someone was going to die if I stayed quiet. Silence stretched. Then Park laughed, a dry, rasping sound. Remarkable. You hired my men to send a message, Mr. Kim. And this woman turned it into a declaration of war. I didn't hire your men. Jae-sung's voice cut through the moment. Someone local did. Someone who wanted us both bleeding. Names. I'm working on it. The first shot came from above. Glass exploded from a second-story window. The crate to Park's left splintered, wood and packing material erupting in a cloud. Jae-sung's instincts screamed down, but Mary was already moving. Not away, toward him. She slammed into his chest, arms wrapping around him in a desperate shield, and he felt the impact. Not a bullet, but her body weight driving them both sideways as the second shot punched through the space where his head had been. They hit the ground hard. Jae-sung twisted mid-fall, covering her. His body between hers and the rooftop muzzle flashes that lit up the darkness like lightning. Rounds stitched across the concrete, sparking and whining. Somewhere close, Park was shouting in Korean. Orders, curses, fury. East exit. Jae-sung dragged Mary toward the narrow corridor between crates. Move. Now. But she was already running, her hand locked in his, pulling him with her into the darkness as the warehouse erupted into chaos. The corridor between crates was a maze. Left turn, right turn, stacks towering overhead that offered cover and claustrophobia in equal measure. Jae-sung counted shots in his head, a rhythm he'd learned young and never forgotten. 6 rounds from the first shooter, 8 from the second. Bolt-action rifles, high-powered, meant to punch through walls and bodies without hesitation. 2 seconds, he said, breath-sharp. When I say move, you move. Don't think, just go. Mary nodded, her hand still locked in his, slick with sweat or blood. He couldn't tell. Behind them, Minho's voice crackled through the earpiece Jae-sung had tucked in before entering. Hyungnim, we've got your 6. Shooters on the north roof. Taking fire. Copy. Jae-sung murmured, then louder to Mary. Count with me. 1, 2, move. They broke from cover, sprinting across an open gap toward a steel support beam. A round cracked past Mary's shoulder. So close Jae-sung felt the displacement of air. Then they were behind the beam, pressed together, breathing hard. You okay? He scanned her for wounds, hands moving over her shoulders, her arms checking for blood. I'm fine. You? Fine. Lie. His side ached from where they'd hit the ground, and his left ear was ringing from the close shot. But functional. Live. A new sound. Footsteps heavy and fast. Park's men falling back, taking defensive positions. Then Minho's voice again. Third shooter. East roof. He's got a bead on your exit. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. The east door was their only clean route out. If it was covered. Plan B, he said. West wall. Water access. You said west was a dead end. It is. Unless you can swim. Mary's eyes widened, but she nodded. No argument. No panic. Just trust. They moved again, low and fast, using the crate stacks for cover. Behind them, gunfire intensified. Minho's team engaging the rooftop shooters, buying seconds that felt like hours. Jae-sung's lungs burned. His side ached. But Mary kept pace, her smaller frame an advantage in the tight spaces, her movements sharp and efficient. The west wall loomed ahead, corrugated metal and rust. A service door that probably hadn't been opened in years. Jae-sung hit it shoulder first. The lock gave way with a shriek of metal. Suddenly they were outside. Cold air. The smell of salt and oil. The black expanse of the harbor stretching out below a crumbling dock. And a masked figure 20 feet away, rifle rising. Jae-sung saw it happen in fractured time, the rifle's muzzle tracking toward Mary, her eyes widening. His body already moving, arm outstretched, shoving her down and back as the shot cracked through the space where she'd been standing. Pain, sharp and hot, lanced across his upper arm. Not deep, a graze, but enough to spin him sideways, off balance. And suddenly Mary was there, hands on his jacket, pulling him toward the dock's edge. Jump, she screamed. They went over together. The water was shockingly cold, a slap that drove the air from Jae-sung's lungs. He kicked hard, pulling Mary with him, away from the dock and the masked shooter above. The current was strong here, pulling them south along the pier line. For 30 seconds, all Jae-sung could focus on was keeping their heads above water and putting distance between them and the gunfire. Finally, they surfaced under a different pier. Older, sagging, the pilings encrusted with barnacles and seaweed. Jae-sung hauled himself onto a barnacle-covered cross beam, then reached down to pull Mary up beside him. They collapsed together, gasping, soaked through and shaking. Your arm! Mary's voice cracked. Her hands were already moving, pulling back his jacket sleeve. Blood welled from a shallow furrow across his bicep. It's not. It's fine. It's not fine. She shrugged out of her own jacket, tore a strip from the hem of her shirt underneath, and wrapped it around his arm with practiced efficiency. Hospital training. Her hands were steady despite the trembling in her shoulders. You threw yourself in front of me, he said. You threw yourself in front of me first. She caught his wrist gently, stilling her movements. In the warehouse. You could have run. Should have run. But you. I couldn't let them kill you. The words tumbled out raw and unfiltered. I couldn't just watch. Jae-sung stared at her. Hair plastered to her face, eyes wide and fierce, hands shaking as she tied off the makeshift bandage. She'd saved him twice now. Once in the rain with a shout. Once in a warehouse with her own body as a shield. Nobody had ever done that for him. Nobody had ever tried. You saved me twice, he said quietly. Water dripped from his hair, his clothes, mixing with the blood on his arm. From death, and from what I become when I'm alone. Mary's hands stilled. What do you become? Someone who doesn't believe people like you exist. He reached up, brushed a strand of wet hair from her face with trembling fingers. Someone who thinks courage and compassion are just weaknesses to exploit. Then stop pretending you're beyond saving. Her voice cracked on the last word. Because you're not. You're not, Jae-sung. The space between them dissolved. He didn't know who moved first. Didn't care. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted like salt water and desperation and something achingly tender. Not a reward. Not a transaction. Surrender. Mary's hands found his face, his jaw, the scar at his temple. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. And for a handful of heartbeats, the world narrowed to just this. Her warmth, her breath, the impossible softness of her touch against the hard edges he'd worn for so long. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jae-sung rested his forehead against hers. We should. Footsteps above. Fast and purposeful. Jae-sung tensed. But then Min-ho's voice cut through the darkness. Hyung-nim, you down there? Here. Jae-sung helped Mary to her feet, keeping her steady as the adrenaline crash started to hit. Status. Min-ho appeared at the pier's edge, flanked by two others. His expression was grim. Shooters scattered. Park's men got one alive. And Hyung-nim, he paused. The rival isn't Park. His men were subcontracted by someone local. They're talking now. Who? Victor Choi. He's pissed you didn't retaliate after the first bomb. Thinks you've gone soft. Wanted to prove it by forcing you into a war with the Park organization. Jae-sung felt Mary's hand tighten in his. Victor Choi. A mid-tier operator who'd been pushing for expansion into Jae-sung's routes for months. Ambitious. Reckless. Exactly the kind of man who'd mistake restraint for weakness. Where is he? Jae-sung asked. We're tracking his locations now. Should have him by dawn. Jae-sung nodded once, then looked at Mary, soaked and shivering and still standing. Let's finish this. Dawn broke cold and gray over the city, painting the safe house's balcony in shades of silver and ash. Jae-sung stood at the railing, a coffee mug warming his hands, watching the streets wake up below. His arm ached where Mary had bandaged it. The graze would heal clean. No permanent damage. Small price. Behind him, through the glass doors, he could hear Min-ho's voice on the phone, clipped, professional, coordinating the dismantling of Victor Choi's network. Not with bullets. With precision. Counts frozen. Route seized. Lieutenants flipped with offers of clemency in exchange for testimony. 3 dock operations shut down overnight. Their illegal manifests exposed to federal authorities who'd been bought off for years. Jae-sung's lungs burned. His side ached. But Mary kept pace, her smaller frame an advantage in the tight spaces, her movements sharp and efficient. The west wall loomed ahead, corrugated metal and rust. A service door that probably hadn't been opened in years. Jae-sung hit it shoulder first. The lock gave way with a shriek of metal. Suddenly they were outside. Cold air. The smell of salt and oil. The black expanse of the harbor stretching out below a crumbling dock. And a masked figure 20 feet away, rifle rising. Jae-sung saw it happen in fractured time, the rifle's muzzle tracking toward Mary, her eyes widening. His body already moving, arm outstretched, shoving her down and back as the shot cracked through the space where she'd been standing. Pain, sharp and hot, lanced across his upper arm. Not deep, a graze, but enough to spin him sideways, off balance. And suddenly Mary was there, hands on his jacket, pulling him toward the dock's edge. "Jump!" she screamed. They went over together. The water was shockingly cold, a slap that drove the air from Jae-sung's lungs. He kicked hard, pulling Mary with him, away from the dock and the masked shooter above. The current was strong here, pulling them south along the pier line. For 30 seconds, all Jae-sung could focus on was keeping their heads above water and putting distance between them and the gunfire. Finally, they surfaced under a different pier. Older, sagging, the pilings encrusted with barnacles and seaweed. Jae-sung hauled himself onto a barnacle-covered cross-beam, then reached down to pull Mary up beside him. They collapsed together, gasping, soaked through and shaking. "Your arm!" Mary's voice cracked. Her hands were already moving, pulling back his jacket sleeve. Blood welled from a shallow furrow across his bicep. "It's not. It's fine. It's not fine." She shrugged out of her own jacket, tore a strip from the hem of her shirt underneath, and wrapped it around his arm with practiced efficiency. Hospital training. Her hands were steady despite the trembling in her shoulders. "You threw yourself in front of me," he said. "You threw yourself in front of me first." She caught his wrist gently, stilling her movements. "In the warehouse. You could have run. Should have run. But you. I couldn't let them kill you." The words tumbled out, raw and unfiltered. "I couldn't just watch." Jae-sung stared at her, hair plastered to her face, eyes wide and fierce, hands shaking as she tied off the makeshift bandage. She'd saved him twice now. Once in the rain with a shout. Once in a warehouse with her own body as a shield. Nobody had ever done that for him. Nobody had ever tried. "You saved me twice," he said quietly. Water dripped from his hair, his clothes, mixing with the blood on his arm. "From death, and from what I become when I'm alone." Mary's hands stilled. "What do you become?" "Someone who doesn't believe people like you exist." He reached up, brushed a strand of wet hair from her face with trembling fingers. "Someone who thinks courage and compassion are just weaknesses to exploit. Then stop pretending you're beyond saving." Her voice cracked on the last word. "Because you're not. You're not, Jae-sung." The space between them dissolved. He didn't know who moved first. Didn't care. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted like salt water and desperation and something achingly tender. Not a reward. Not a transaction. Surrender. Mary's hands found his face, his jaw, the scar at his temple. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her closer. And for a handful of heartbeats, the world narrowed to just this. Her warmth, her breath, the impossible softness of her touch against the hard edges he'd worn for so long. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Jae-sung rested his forehead against hers. "We should." Footsteps above. Fast and purposeful. Jae-sung tensed, but then Min-ho's voice cut through the darkness. "Hyung-nim, you down there?" "Here." Jae-sung helped Mary to her feet, keeping her steady as the adrenaline crash started to hit. "Status." Min-ho appeared at the pier's edge, flanked by 2 others. His expression was grim. Shooters scattered. Park's men got one alive. "And Hyung-nim," he paused. "The rival isn't Park. His men were subcontracted by someone local. They're talking now." "Who?" "Victor Choi. He's pissed you didn't retaliate after the first bomb. Thinks you've gone soft. Wanted to prove it by forcing you into a war with the Park organization." Jae-sung felt Mary's hand tighten in his. Victor Choi. A mid-tier operator who'd been pushing for expansion into Jae-sung's routes for months. Ambitious. Reckless. Exactly the kind of man who'd mistake restraint for weakness. "Where is he?" Jae-sung asked. "We're tracking his locations now. Should have him by dawn." Jae-sung nodded once, then looked at Mary, soaked and shivering and still standing. "Let's finish this." Dawn broke cold and gray over the city, painting the safe house's balcony in shades of silver and ash. Jae-sung stood at the railing, a coffee mug warming his hands, watching the streets wake up below. His arm ached where Mary had bandaged it. The graze would heal clean. No permanent damage. Small price. Behind him, through the glass doors, he could hear Minho's voice on the phone, clipped, professional, coordinating the dismantling of Victor Choi's network. Not with bullets. With precision. Counts frozen. Route seized. Lieutenants flipped with offers of clemency in exchange for testimony. 3 dock operations shut down overnight. Their illegal manifests exposed to federal authorities who'd been bought off for years. A surgical strike that followed Mary's line. End the threat without creating more bodies. It was working. Slowly. Methodically. But working. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. A single image. A white envelope on expensive stationery. The park organization's seal embossed in gold. Below it a text. Your woman was right. My men were used. The bomb maker has been found. Consider our business concluded. Ark. Jae-sung deleted the message, but the weight lifted slightly from his chest. One threat neutralized. One war averted. Hyung-nim. Minho stepped onto the balcony. His expression unreadable. Choi's lieutenant just flipped. Gave us everything. Bank accounts, safe houses, the works. We can move on Choi himself within the hour. Coordinate with the feds, Jae-sung said. Let them make the arrest. Public. By the book. I want Choi behind bars, not in the ground. Minho blinked. You sure? He tried to kill you twice. I'm sure. Jae-sung met his gaze. Killing him makes him a martyr. Arresting him makes him a cautionary tale. And it keeps our hands clean. Minho studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Mary's influence. Yes. Jae-sung didn't deny it. Couldn't. And it's working. After Minho left, Jae-sung returned inside to find Amara sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, a chessboard spread out in front of her. The same board he'd left in the library 3 days ago. She looked up when he entered, her expression serious. I learned how the night moves, she announced. It's tricky. It is. Jae-sung agreed, crossing to sit across from her. His body protested. Bruised ribs, aching muscles, exhaustion that went bone deep, but he ignored it. Show me. She demonstrated, her small fingers moving the pieces with careful deliberation. Mom says you got hurt last night. Are you okay? I'm fine. He paused. Your mother saved me. Again. Amara nodded like this made perfect sense. She's good at that. Saving people. She looked up, dark eyes solemn. Do you like her? Like her. Jae-sung felt something crack open in his chest. Not painful but profound. Yes, he said honestly. I do. Good. Amara moved her knight. Because she likes you too. Even though you're scary sometimes. I'm working on that. You should work faster. She grinned, sudden and bright. Checkmate in 4 moves, by the way. I practiced. Jae-sung looked down at the board, reassessed, and realized she was right. He'd been so focused on defense. He'd missed her offense entirely. Well played, he said, meaning it. That evening, Jae-sung found Mary on the balcony, wrapped in one of his jackets against the chill. The city sprawled below, lights beginning to flicker on as dusk settled. She didn't turn when he approached, but he saw her shoulders relax slightly. It's over, he said quietly. Victor Choi was arrested an hour ago. Federal charges. Multiple counts. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison. Mary exhaled slowly. No bodies. No bodies. He moved to stand beside her, close enough to feel her warmth. 3 dock operations shut down. 12 arrests. Enough evidence to make prosecutors very happy. Your way. Our way, she corrected softly. Then after a pause. What happens now? That depends. He turned to face her. The question he'd been avoiding finally breaking free. What do you want, Mary? Beyond survival, beyond safety. What do you actually want? She was quiet for a long time, her gaze fixed on the city. A life where my daughter isn't afraid of loud noises at night, she said finally. Where I don't have to choose between rent and groceries. Where, her voice caught, where I get to make choices, not just react to other people's violence. I can give you that. The words came easily, naturally. Protection. Financial security. A real home for you and Amara. No strings. No obligations. Just choices, not cages, Mary interrupted, turning to meet his gaze. If I stay in your world, Jae-sung, it's as an equal. Not a kept woman. Not a liability to protect. A partner. Something fierce and warm flooded through him. I wouldn't want it any other way. Her phone buzzed before she could respond. She pulled it out, frowned, then went very still. What? Jae-sung asked, already moving closer. She turned the screen toward him. An image. Amara outside Westfield Elementary. Pink backpack, braids neat, talking to another student. Time-stamped 3 days ago, before they'd even gone to the warehouse. Below it a text, last chance. The world went cold and sharp. Jae-sung took the phone carefully, screenshotted the message, sent it to Min-ho. When was this taken? Monday morning. Before. Mary's voice shook. Before any of this escalated. Which means someone's been watching her since the beginning. Jae-sung's mind raced through possibilities, threats, angles of attack. Victor's people. Park organization. Someone new. Does it matter? Mary's eyes were wide, terrified. They know where she goes to school. They have photos. Jae-sung, what do we? We end it. He cupped her face gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. Tonight. Permanently. But I need you to trust me one more time. Mary's breath hitched. Then she nodded. Always. The call came through at 9 p.m. Victor Choi was willing to talk. Not to the feds. Jae-sung. It's a trap, Min-ho said flatly, pacing the safe house's war room. He wants you close enough to take one last shot. Probably. Jae-sung didn't look up from his phone, where he was coordinating with 2 women from his old neighborhood. Rose and Jin-hee, the ones who'd protected him when his father's empire had collapsed. Who'd taught him that strength came in forms other than violence. Set it up anyway. The Paramount Theater. Me. Just him, his lawyer, and us. Hyung Nim. I want Mary there. The room went silent. Even Min-ho, who'd learned to expect the unexpected, stared. She needs to see how this ends, Jae-sung continued, voice calm but unyielding. She needs to know that choosing restraint doesn't mean choosing weakness. Mary stepped into the room then, Amara's hand in hers. Amara's going with Rosa and Jin-hee, she said. You trust them with your life. Jae-sung crouched down to meet Amara's gaze. They're going to take you somewhere safe. Somewhere fun. Ice cream and movies. I know, Amara interrupted, surprising them all. Mom explained. You're going to stop the bad people so we don't have to hide anymore. Exactly. Jae-sung held out his hand. After a moment, Amara shook it solemnly. Don't let my mom get hurt, she said, voice small but fierce. I won't. It was the easiest promise he'd ever made. The Paramount Theater was a ghost. Velvet seats coated in dust, a stage curtain that hadn't risen in years. Victor Choi sat in the front row, flanked by a nervous lawyer who kept checking his watch. Victor himself looked defiant, chin up, shoulders back, even with federal charges hanging over him. Kim. Victor's voice echoed in the empty space. Come to gloat. No. Jae-sung walked down the center aisle, Mary a half step behind him, Min-ho and 2 others flanking. I came to show you something. He nodded to Min-ho, who produced a tablet and held it up. Financial records scrolled across the screen. Accounts, transactions, dates. Victor's illegal operations laid bare in black and white. This is what the feds have, Jae-sung continued. 3 counts of racketeering, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit murder, wire fraud, money laundering. You're looking at 30 years minimum. Victor's defiance cracked slightly. So I'm offering you a choice. Jae-sung stopped 5 feet away, hands loose at his sides. You can fight this. Tie it up in court for years. Bleed your resources dry. Watch your family suffer while you rot in prison. Or you cooperate. Give up your remaining operators. Expose the corruption you've been feeding. And in exchange, I make sure your wife and kids are protected. Financially secure. Untouchable. Victor's eyes narrowed. Why would you do that? Because killing you accomplishes nothing, Jae-sung said simply. But showing mercy, that rewrites the rules everyone thinks I play by. He felt Mary's gaze on him, steady and sure. This was her influence. The belief that power didn't have to be measured in bodies. That strength could look like restraint. Victor stared at him for a long moment. Then his shoulders sagged. I want the deal in writing. Done. Jae-sung nodded to the lawyer, who scrambled for his briefcase. And Victor, if you ever threaten anyone in my circle again, if you even think about it, mercy ends. Understood. Understood. They left him there, small and defeated in the empty theater, and walked out into the night. The safe house felt different when they returned. Warmer somehow. Less like a fortress and more like a home. Amara was already back, curled on the couch with Rosa, watching a movie and eating popcorn. She lit up when she saw Mary, launching herself across the room. Mom. Jean, he taught me how to make kimchi pancakes. Did she? Mary caught her daughter, held her close, and Jae-sung watched the tension finally drain from her frame. That's wonderful, baby. Dinner that night was simple. The pancakes Amara had helped make, a salad, rice still warm from the cooker. They ate together at the kitchen table, the five of them. Jae-sung, Mary, Amara, Rosa, and Jean-hee, who refused to leave until she was sure everyone was actually okay. Amara laughed at something Rosa said, the sound bright and unguarded, and Jae-sung felt something shift in his chest. This was what he'd been missing. Not power or territory or fear. Connection. Family. The kind that was chosen, not just inherited. Later, after Amara was asleep and Rosa and Jean he had finally been convinced to go home, Jae-sung found Mary on the balcony again. The night was clear, stars barely visible through the city's light pollution, but the air smelled clean. It's really over, Mary asked, not looking at him. It's really over. He moved to stand beside her, their shoulders almost touching. Victor will cooperate. The park organization has pulled back. The threats neutralized. So we can go home, she said it carefully, testing the words. You can. Jae-sung's throat tightened. If that's what you want, I'll make sure you're protected. Guards, security system, whatever you need. You and Amara can go back to your life. Mary turned to face him, her expression unreadable in the dim light. What if I don't want to go back? His breath caught. Mary, you said I get to choose, she interrupted. That this is about agency, not captivity. So I'm choosing. She took his hand, her fingers warm and sure. I'm choosing to stay. Not because I'm afraid. Not because I need protection. But because, her voice softened. Because you were my warning and now you're my compass. Jae-sung felt the words settle into him, rewriting something fundamental. I warned the devil once, she continued. And now I walk beside the man. But I have conditions. Name them. Amara stays in her school. We get a real address, not a safe house. Sunlight and open windows and locks I control. I'm not a prisoner in your world, Jae-sung. I'm a partner. Done. He said it without hesitation. Without calculation. All of it. Whatever you need. And one more thing. She stepped closer, her free hand finding his face, thumb tracing the scar at his jawline. You let me help you rewrite what power looks like. One rule at a time. No more bodies unless there's no other choice. No more wars that can be solved with words. You're asking me to change everything I've built. I'm asking you to build something better. Her eyes held his, fierce and uncompromising. With me. For a long moment, Jae-sung just looked at her. This woman who'd run into danger to save a stranger. Who'd shielded him with her own body. Who'd refused to be caged even when fear demanded it. She'd rewritten his rules without even trying. And in doing so, she'd given him something he'd thought lost forever. Oh. Then we build it together, he said and kissed her. Low. Inevitable. When they finally pulled apart, the city hummed below them. engines and voices and the pulse of life continuing in the dark. Mary leaned into him, her head on his shoulder, and he wrapped his arms around her. Every time engines hummed in the dark, she would remember the rain, the neon, the word bomb whispered in Korean. The moment she chose to speak instead of stay silent. The moment that changed everything. She'd warned the devil once. Now she walked beside the man, rewriting what power looked like, one careful choice at a time. And for the first time in 13 years, Kim Jae-sung believed in something more than survival. He believed in mercy, in second chances, in the woman who'd saved him twice, once from death and once from himself. 3 months later, Mary stood in the doorway of their new apartment, watching Jae-sung help Amara with her homework at the kitchen table. Real homework at her real school, in their real home with real sunlight streaming through windows that opened onto a tree-lined street. The locks were hers to control. The decisions were hers to make. The life was theirs to build. "Mom," Amara called. "Jae-sung says he'll teach me Korean if I teach him how to braid hair." Mary laughed, the sound free and unguarded. "That seems like a fair trade." Jae-sung looked up, caught her gaze and smiled. Not the cold smile from that rainy night. Not the controlled smile of a man playing chess with human lives. But something warm and genuine and entirely new. He was still dangerous. Still controlled. Still the man who could burn the city if he chose. But now he had reasons not to. Now he had a 7-year-old teaching him about fairness and a woman teaching him about mercy. Now he had a family that chose him not because they feared him but because they loved him. Mary crossed to the table, pressed a kiss to Amara's head, then to Jae-sung's lips. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For letting me save you." "No." His hand found hers, squeezed gently. "Thank you for not giving up on the man beneath the devil." Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Somewhere engines hummed in the dark. Somewhere people made choices between silence and speaking, between walking away and running toward danger. And in a small apartment on a tree-lined street, a single mother and a reformed mobster and a little girl who believed in fairness built something that looked remarkably like redemption. One careful choice at a time. If you enjoyed this story of courage, redemption, and unexpected love, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next tale. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice? What would you have done in Mary's position? Let's talk about it. Until next time, remember. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak up when silence seems safer. Stay bold, stay kind, and I'll see you in the next story.